So, as some of you will know, Victor Davis Hanson used to be a regular fixture of Tucker Carlson's show, but recently he has been speaking out against Tucker and the rise of anti Israel and anti Semitic hostility on the alt right, as it were. And he's been speaking about this more and more and getting into it. And he is, to be honest, on the money when analyzing what's going on these elements of the right and, or supposedly on the right, even though it's just far right, it's illegitimate, it's fascistic in nature, and just a very dangerous, dark path that people are going down. And, you know, people like Tucker, and then there's the Megyn Kellys and the JD Vances and others, they're all kind of in their own way, kind of giving a bit of a nod and a wink, and sometimes much more than that, and kind of permitting these elements to grow rather than calling it out for what it is. It's really terrible. But here he is analysing what's going on at a deeper level. Have a watch of this clip from the interview, and I'll see you on the other side.
But I want to address first, this is why we support Israel. And then just say what I just said. But with bullet points. There is no cabal of Jews. They are the most loyal Americans there are. Israel is not being subsidized by us. It is a dynamic economy. It's got Nobel Prize, and it's in our interest, strategically and militarily. That's why. It's an oasis in a sea of tyranny. Okay, just talk about that, and then talk about, and this is what I'm going to do. I don't think the 50-year mortgage is a very good idea. You're just making peasants, you know what I mean? And you're not going to get full equity. And I would rather say we're going to give incentives for developers who sell owner-occupied houses. Because what's happening, Wall Street and all these investors are buying millions of these homes up for rentals and in long-term investment. You could give an incentive, just like a housing development has certain rules. You have to pay your dues to the home, the homeowners. I think that's the right term, homeowners. You could say that we're only going to be homeowners. This is a development for owner occupied, not for people to invest in 3 or 4 homes and rent it out. And they have clauses like that, but really stress that, and then deregulate and give to the states incentives if their local zoning laws will encourage housing, and then have a straight talk with the universities. And I think he's doing that and saying, you've got to get your house in order. You've been raising tuition higher than the rate of inflation because you get guaranteed federal loans. You're going to guarantee the loans with your endowment. You do it, not us. And then have some kind of, they're already offering incentives to work off your debt if you work 4 or 5 years, and they have to have a way to get these kids to get out of that stupid debt they incurred, because it was like they bought a used car and they weren't told what they were buying, and the engine was no good. Well, they were told that you got to go to college. They're 18 years old. Your future will be assured once you get your degree. And these guys in the university, I'm not making fun of used car salesmen, but they sold them a clunker. And they didn't read that. They didn't have to sign 18 pages when I used to buy used cars because I had no money. 18 or 19 pages I had to sign. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of this? Are you aware of the interest rate? This is the monthly. They didn't do any of that. They just signed over their lives. And so my point is, they need to address the causes that make people goipers. And then they have to say, if people in our movement, we're not going to cancel anybody. We don't believe in counseling. But if people engage in extremist activity and hate and racist talk, we're not going to give them a platform. We're just not going to do it. And you can call it whatever you want. You can have any platform on the internet. We're not going to pass a misinformation, disinformation. We're not going to resurrect the Stanford Internet Observatory with euphemisms to go after you. We're not going to do what Joe Biden did and tell the New York Post that the new FBI, Twitter Nexus, FBI Nexus is not going to allow you to report on Hunter's lap. No. Anything goes. However, we're not going to have you come to the White House. We're not going to have you come to Mar-a-Lago. We're not going to put you on any platform. If Tucker Carlson wants to do it, fine. And if he doesn't want to cross-examine them like Buckley or other people do, fine. But we're not going to have Tucker at the White House. We're not going to attack him. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to say, you guys do your thing. We're going to be inclusive. We're going to build this MAGA movement, but we're not going to have people who hate other people based on their religion, or they're going to make pseudo arguments about the cabal or the conspiracy. That's all they have to do. And then they need to say this: we're not going to do this because the left, that's for the left to do. The left is the people at Harvard at Cooper Union that chase Jews into a library. The left is the people, if you beat up a Jew or assault him, they'll give you a $65,000 fellowship at Harvard. Or they'll make you a Grand Marshal at the graduation. Or at Stanford, they'll have a guy working that puts Jews on one side. That's what they do. They attack ICE. They are in the university. They are the people that use the F-bombs. We're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do that. They are the crude people. They are the violent people. They are the people who cancel. They are the people who ruin people's careers. We're not going to do that, but we can be selective. And that's the difference. And I think he needs to talk about that. Because if he doesn't, one last thing, everybody has this idea that because you're engaging in racist hate speech, like Nick Fuentes, therefore you're crude and inept.
Before we continue, I want to quickly share a really important message. Now that a ceasefire is in place, some people might think that Israel's pain is over. But anyone who's been following what's really happening knows it is not. The toll that this war has taken on Israel's economy, on families, on ordinary people just trying to get by is enormous. That's where Leket Israel, the National Food Bank, comes in. Leket rescues surplus, nutritious food, fresh produce from farmers, and hot meals from hotels, corporate cafeterias, even IDF bases, and delivers them to Israelis who can't afford a proper meal. Every week, they are feeding 415,000 people, including Holocaust survivors, soldiers, families, and children who should never have to go hungry. Even now, requests for help keep pouring in. Families who never thought they'd need food assistance suddenly do. If you've ever asked yourself, how can I really help Israel right now? This is one of the most meaningful ways. Just $180 provides 120 meals. So if you want to support, please just click the link below in the video description and stand with Leket Israel, helping feed the people who have given so much for the country that we all care about.
Because smart people wouldn't do that. Well, smart evil people would do that, as history shows us. So when you see David Duke or George Wallace or Orville Forbes, that was in my, when I was a kid, or Strom Thurmond in his heyday during the Dixiecrats. Now, he later kind of repented, but when you see those people, they didn't get there because they couldn't speak. You put Nick Fuentes there, and they would be very hard for a moderator. It would take, as I said earlier, Buckley, I saw the debate with George Wallace. He had all the moral and logical arguments on his side. Wallace was just a sophist trying to dress up segregation, saying that black people voted and loved him. But he said it in a way that he was a better debater. His voice was better. His gestures were better. His repartee was better than Buckley. So when you put Fuentes on there, you got to be very careful because you're dealing with nitroglycerin. Now, there are people on the right that can handle him, but not. Tucker has the ability to do it because he did it to, I think, unnecessarily to his old ally, Ted Cruz. So he has those skills. He could have done the same thing when he said, I'll give you one example and I'll shut up. When he said, well, it's Stalin's birthday. He's my favorite person. And Tucker said, well, I'll get back to that. He didn't get back to that. And he smiled. He should have said, how old are you? 27. Have you ever read Stephen Kotkin's biography of Stalin? No? Have you read anything about Stalin and his life? How many people died under his rule? 20 million in the Great Famine? You know anything about the military purges when he liquidated, 40,000 of his top officers? How about the show trials when he got rid of all the intellectuals? How about in Ukraine and the kulaks? Anybody have a horse? Anybody have a rudimentary tractor. They were enemies of the people, and they didn't. And he would say, well, they didn't shoot them. No, they starved them to death. And they took their homes away, and they let them wander out in the wilderness, begging people to let them in their doors. You have any idea how evil that man was? And why didn't he do that? He could do that very easily. And I don't think Nick Fuentes could have replied to that. He could have taken Darrell Cooper and nailed him to the wall. All he had to have was 4 or 5 facts about World War II. You don't have to be Andrew Roberts to debate Darrell Cooper when he says they firebombed the Black Forest and they were trying to kill German civilians, or they accidentally sort of kind of messed up and they had no idea that when they went into Ukraine, there were 2 million people going to starve to death. That's not very hard to refute.
No. They knew exactly. They were taking all the grain to sell it to get money.
And I am mystified, I must say that, because I was at Tucker didn't have to put me on Fox all those years and I owe him a debt of gratitude. And I never heard any of that from him. And I followed his career. I met him in Hoover 20 years ago. I followed his career when he was at CNN. I followed his career when he was for the Iraq War, then he was not for. They were both legitimate positions he took. And I followed his father, who was a wonderful man at Voice of America, big supporter of Israel. And so I don't understand what's happened. I even believe that he was unfairly fired from Fox without warning. I think that was a travesty. So I don't know what happened, but it's not the Tucker that I used to see on Fox.
So let's unpack what he says here, because it resonates so hard, and he's debunking the myths and nonsense that's said about Jews. First of all, the whole loyalty thing. He shreds the dual loyalty smears that we've heard since forever. This goes back way beyond American history, by the way. But think about it. Jewish Americans have always punched well above their weight for America. They were just 3% of the population back in the day, but over 500,000 served in World War II, which is more than 4% of the entire US Armed Forces. And they've had thousands of valor citations, including 17 Medals of Honor. And these were not side gigs. This was full-throated support of America, fighting the Nazis. And Hanson also understands that, the dual loyalty thing, it's like, well, who are you loyal to? You loyal to the Jews? Are you loyal to America? It's like saying, are you loyal to your aunt or are you loyal to your cousin? I mean, who said there's a tension? People try and do this in order to stoke animosity towards Jews and others. You could say to a Catholic, you consider the Pope the supreme being, so are you loyal to Rome or are you loyal to Washington, D.C. and America and the president? But no one does that somehow when it comes to Catholics. And on Israel, being this self-sufficient oasis, absolutely right. They've had 13 Nobel Prizes in science and economics, GDP of 500 billion, game changers like the Iron Dome that saved countless lives on both sides of the ocean. And Israel, contrary to what some try to paint Israel to be, is not a charity case. The US aid, yes, clocks in around 3.8 billion a year, which is a drop in the ocean when it comes to American defense and overall spending. And it's mostly for defense tech that we share right back. And a lot of the aid, quote unquote, given to Israel has to spend on American weapons. So it goes right back into the American economy. And frankly, gives America such good value for money. And I'm not, by the way, I believe that Israel should be weaned off American aid for Israel's benefit, because our dependence is dangerous, it's risky. And I really welcome Netanyahu's decision that they're going to start to work on a path towards arms independence. Absolutely the right move. Excellent move. Necessary. But in a region that's drowning in tyranny, from Iran's proxies to Hamas tunnels, Israel is leading the way as such a useful, incredible source of intelligence, security sharing for America. It's like having America's best friend that can be at the heart of all its enemies, right there, seeing what's going on. So it's not just altruism, even if it was just altruism, there's nothing wrong with supporting Israel and the Jews. But it is smart power, keeping radicalism from your shores. Alliances are not handouts. They're lifelines often for the free world. But the meaty part was that Hanson's blueprint for the right versus the left's rot was really crucial. He wants MAGA, so to speak, to build in a really inclusive way, with a zero tolerance towards the whole Fuentes crowd. Not to be amplifying their tricks, their slick arguments, which dress up hate in debate club polish. And he did a fantastic takedown, I thought, of pro-Stalin Fuentes on the appalling things that Stalin did. Millions starved in Ukraine's famines and the purges done to people. So I think Hanson is right that the right needs to be keeping extremists in check. And if they don't, then more and more people are going to be convinced of nonsense. Because as Goebbels taught us, a lie only needs to be repeated enough for people to start believing it. A quick message. We all hear about the Palestinian displacement, or nakba, of 1948. But there was another, even greater displacement that we haven't been told about. Nearly 1 million Jews were expelled from Arab lands at the exact same time. Watch the trailer for our new and absolutely essential documentary called The Real Nakba. And if you want to watch the full film, just click the link below in the video description. We've all been told about the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe of 1948. Around 700,000 Arabs were displaced. But here's what you're rarely told. That displacement didn't come from some Jewish plan for genocide. It wasn't Israel's goal. It wasn't Israel's desire. It happened because Arab leaders launched a war of annihilation. They tried to wipe out the newborn Jewish state, vowing to drive the Jews into the sea. And in the chaos of that war, people fled. Many because their leaders told them to, promising they'd return after victory. But the term nakba was originally used to describe the fact that the Arabs lost the war, not the displacement. Now the term describes the displacement of war used as a political weapon against Israel. But there was another nakba you haven't been told about. A catastrophe rooted not in the fog of war, but in the clear, deliberate desire for persecution and genocide. It happened at the very same time, and it led to even more displacement. Yet most of the world has never heard of it. Over 850,000 Jews, more than the number of displaced Arabs, were driven from their homes across the Arab world. Communities that had thrived for millennia were uprooted overnight. Families stripped of citizenship, of property, of dignity, assaulted, expelled, forced to flee with nothing but their faith. Why? Because they were Jews. Because Israel dared to exist. Because the Arab League openly orchestrated it, drafting plans in 1947 to freeze Jewish bank accounts, seize property, and intern Jews as enemy nationals. This is the real Nakba, a catastrophe born of pure anti-Semitism. In this JTV documentary, we'll journey country by country, from Baghdad to Cairo, from Sana'a to Tripoli, uncovering buried truths and survivor voices. And no, this isn't a tale of victimhood, it's a saga of endurance, courage, and triumph. Because the Jewish people didn't just survive this Nakba, we rebuilt, we came home. In Israel, our phoenix soared from the ashes. So buckle up and let's dive in. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.